the packed earth of Cedar Creek Plaza, baked under the merciless hammer of the August sun. It was a place where desperation mixed with dust, where the lives scratched out in this remote mountain settlement were often as hard and unforgiving as the unforged silver ore beneath the ground. The air hung thick, tasting of alkali and the faint, ever-present scent of pine smoke from distant mining claims. A small cluster of cowboys, their faces shielded by wide-brimmed, sun-bleached hats, lounged against the rough-hewn hitching posts. Their spurs occasionally scraped against the ground, catching dull, fleeting glints of light that quickly vanished in the blinding glare. Merchants hawked their wares from storefronts that had been bleached pale by years of relentless weather and time, their voices carrying the tired resignation of men who expected little change in their fortunes. Women in calico dresses, holding parasols tilted against the fierce solar assault, hurried past, determined not to linger or invite the crude stares of idle men. It was into this ordinary, brutal afternoon that Ada Mae Blackwood walked, possessing a sense of purpose that immediately set her apart. Folks throughout the mountains knew her. They called her the Mountain Medicine Woman when their children were burning with fever, or when the local doctor failed and they called her far worse names, a root woman, a heathen, when the fear of the unfamiliar or the sting of ingrained prejudice took hold. Ada Mae stood tall for a woman of her generation, her dark skin gleaming faintly with perspiration beneath the wide collar of her simple, homespun dress. The garment was chosen solely for its practicality, a deliberate contrast to the tight corsets and frills of the town women. The heavy leather satchel slung across her shoulder, bulging visibly with the herbs, roots, and carefully prepared tinctures of her trade, was both her professional shield and her personal burden. She stopped not by any shop or watering trough, but dead center in the plaza, her gaze sweeping across the collection of men until it locked onto a lone figure seated casually on the weathered steps of the saloon. He was a stranger, a genuine drifter by the evidence of his trail-worn clothes, durable canvas, scuffed boots, and a duster tied loosely behind his saddle on a rangy bay. But he was not the usual breed of transient gambler or drunken cowhand. His hand rested near the holstered Colt at his hip with an unsettling ease, suggesting a man intimately acquainted with trouble, but not currently seeking it. Unlike the other men, this one hadn't participated in the low snickers and mocking whispers that invariably followed Ada Mae's passage. He merely watched. She squared her shoulders, drawing a deep, deliberate breath of the dry mountain air, tasting the dust and the metallic tang of distant silver. She strode directly toward him. The plaza fell into a tense, immediate silence, every inhabitant recognizing the charged atmosphere of drama about to unfold. She halted precisely 3 feet from the seated cowboy, forcing him to tilt his head back sharply to meet her intense, steady gaze, holding him captive with her eyes. "You," she said. The single word sliced through the sudden quiet of the square with the startling report of a rifle shot. Her voice was clear, carrying a desperate clarity that demanded attention. "Tonight, you're coming to my bed." The silence shattered instantly, replaced by a cacophony of guffaws, whistles, and crude catcalls. Men doubled over with mirth, slapping their thighs and stomping their feet in appreciation of the scandal, but the cowboy did not laugh. His gray eyes, the color of a sudden, severe winter storm in the high peaks, studied her with an intensity that rendered the surrounding hilarity hollow and distant. He saw what the fools around them missed, the barely perceptible tremor in her fiercely clenched fists, the desperate, calculated resolve in her posture, and the way she held herself like a lone soldier, preparing for a final, impossible stand against overwhelming odds. "Ma'am," he said, his voice a low, resonant rumble, controlled and steady. "That is a mighty bold proposition for a Sunday afternoon." "I am not proposing anything improper," Ada Mae replied, lifting her chin higher, a gesture of sheer defiance. "I need a husband, legal and proper. You look like a man who might listen to reason before you listen to the fools laughing behind you." The laughter sputtered, died, and then evaporated entirely. This was different. This was business. In Cedar Creek, business, especially that which involved marriage, land, and property, was never a laughing matter, carrying weight far beyond personal scandal. The cowboy unfolded his long frame from the saloon steps, rising slowly to his full height. He topped her by a good 4 inches, his broad shoulders temporarily blocking the harsh afternoon sun. "Name's Jedediah Stone," he said, touching the brim of his hat. "Most folks call me Jed. And you are?" "Ada Mae Blackwood. My father was Josiah Blackwood." She watched the recognition flicker across his features, a mix of caution and respect. Everyone knew of Josiah Blackwood, the freedman who had secured 200 acres of silver-rich mountain land back when such feats were almost unheard of, thanks to his literacy and shrewd legal mind. The man who had died 3 months prior, under circumstances that had set the tongues wagging from the local tavern to the territorial capital. "I heard about your father," Jed said carefully. "Also heard you might be having some trouble with his holdings." Ada Mae's laugh was bitter, tasting of dust and disappointment. "Trouble? That's one word for it." She pulled a folded document from her satchel. "Territorial court says I have 30 days to marry or forfeit everything my father built. 23 days have already passed, and the clock is running out." "And the 3 men who were courting you?" Jed asked, demonstrating his grasp of the local gossip. "All 3 discovered pressing business elsewhere." She shrugged, the gesture tired and resigned. "The 3rd was honest enough to admit Sheriff Silas Croft made it worth his while to disappear." Jed's gray eyes narrowed slightly. "Sheriff Croft!" Ada Mae neither confirmed nor denied the name. Her fierce silence spoke volumes. Croft owned half the businesses in Cedar Creek, controlled the freight lines, held influence over the bank, and had been circling Josiah Blackwood's land, waiting for the old man to fail, like a vulture for years. "Why me?" Jed asked. "You don't know anything about me. I know you've been in town 3 days. I know Croft hired you to smooth things over during the cattle season, but you haven't taken his money yet, which means you're either honest or calculating. Either way, you're not in his pocket." Her voice dropped, becoming a low, urgent murmur. "My father taught me to read people, Mr. Stone. You're the kind of man who waits and watches before acting. You're my best chance." Jed studied her for a long moment, the crowd still straining to hear. "What are you offering?" "Partnership," Ada Mae said simply. "Marriage in name, legal and binding. I keep my land and my father's legacy. You get 20% of the silver profits and a place to hang your hat when you're not drifting. After 1 year, if you want to move on, we'll arrange a quiet legal divorce. No harm to either of us. And if I say no?" Ada Mae's shoulders sagged momentarily, the weight of the moment almost crushing her, before she forced them straight again. "Then, in 7 days, Croft takes everything my father bled for. The land, the valuable silver claims, the house my mother died in. All of it." Her voice hardened with resolve. "And I'll spend the rest of my days knowing I could have stopped it if I'd been brave enough to ask a stranger for help." Jed removed his hat, running fingers through his sweat-dampened hair. "When?" he asked finally. Hope flared in Ada Mae's eyes. "Tomorrow morning. Judge Peters rides circuit back through here on Tuesday. We could—" "Tonight," Jed interrupted. "Reverend Mills can perform the ceremony. If we're doing this, we're doing it before anyone has time to interfere. Delay is the enemy of necessity." Ada Mae blinked, startled by his decisiveness. "You mean—" "I mean what I said. But first, you and I need to talk privately. I need all the details." He offered his arm, a gesture of surprising old-world courtesy that silenced the last pockets of laughter. "Shall we?" Ada Mae placed her hand on his arm, feeling the solid muscle beneath his sleeve. Together, they walked through the parting crowd. As they passed the general store, Jed caught sight of Sheriff Croft watching from the window, his face contorted with cold calculation and swiftly escalating anger. "He's not going to let this happen easily," Jed murmured. "I know," Ada Mae replied. "That's why I chose a man wearing a gun." They made their way to the small church at the edge of town, seeking refuge from the heat and the prying eyes. Inside, the light filtered through the plain glass windows, casting long, peaceful shadows. "Now," Jed said, settling onto a back pew, "tell me the real story. All of it. Why is Croft so certain you'll lose?" Ada Mae sat, her back straight. "My father was born into slavery in Virginia. He taught himself letters and numbers, saved every penny, and came west. He secured the land through sheer cunning and legal literacy, paying back taxes before anyone else understood the legal notice posted in Denver. He taught me everything. Law, how to manage accounts, how to essay silver ore, and how to use these mountains to heal folks. He said knowledge was the only true protection we had, a fortress no man could steal, but it wasn't enough. No, Jed agreed, leaning forward. No fortress is impenetrable. He started getting sick last winter. Confusion, trembling hands, nightmares. Dr. Theron Finch said it was mountain fever, prescribed expensive, useless tonics. Papa got worse, the confusion deepening until he barely recognized me. Dr. Finch, of course, is Sheriff Croft's cousin. Ada Mae pulled out the small glass vial, the evidence cold in her hand. I found this after he died. A chemist in Denver tested the residue, mercury, enough to drive a man mad if given slowly over time, mimicking natural illness. Jed took the vial, holding the tiny, ominous object up to the light. You have proof Finch murdered your father, systematically and over months. Proof enough for me, not enough for a territorial court that would inevitably take a white doctor's word over mine. But if I can keep the land, I can keep fighting. There are others Croft has destroyed. Together, we might build something better than the greed-fueled system he runs. Jed handed back the vial. And you trust me with all this? A stranger whose only recommendation is a lack of attachment? My father used to say, desperation makes philosophers of us all. Besides, you're not just any drifter. You solved the Amarillo Range War through negotiation, not bullets. You solved problems, Mr. Stone. I'm offering you a chance to solve mine. Jed considered this, his gaze lingering on the simple wooden cross at the altar. I'm a man who prefers talk when possible, but I understand the necessity of action. My own father lost his farm to legal trickery and powerful men. I was too young to help then. Maybe I'm not too old to help now. Finally, Jed stood, offering his hand. Let's find Reverend Mills. I want this done and legal before sundown. Best get this done before Croft figures out how to stop us. Ada Mae squeezed his arm in silent acknowledgement of his commitment. Ada Mae led Jed up the winding path toward her cabin. Along the way, she provided a silent lesson in survival, pointing out the white oak bark for fever, the underground spring, the dangerous sunning spots of the rattlesnakes. He taught me to survive. Ada Mae corrected Jed's earlier observation. The cabin appeared through the pines, logs weathered silver gray, a testament to Josiah Blackwood's diligence. Papa built this with his own hands, Ada Mae said with deep pride. Inside, the cabin was a blend of practical utility and intellectual pursuit. Shelves lined one wall, housing hundreds of carefully labeled glass jars of herbs. Books, a treasure trove of law, science, and history, occupied another. You practice healing, Ada Mae replied to Jed's query. Medicine is what Dr. Finch practices, charging folks $1 for sugar water and calling it tonic. I learned from my father, who studied medicine before the war, combined with what he learned from the Cherokee healers. Knowledge doesn't care about the color of the hands holding it, only the mind that wields it. Jed studied the legal document again. The statute is highly specific, only applies to unmarried women inheriting property over 1,000 acres, a law crafted precisely to target people like your father. Very convenient for those wanting to grab land from widows and spinsters, Ada Mae agreed. There's silver in these mountains. Papa found the vein 5 years ago, but kept it quiet. But somehow, Croft found out. She showed him the chunk of gleaming ore. This land could make a man wealthy beyond imagining, or destroy him with greed. And you trust me with this knowledge? If you meant harm, knowing about the silver won't make it worse. Besides, a wife shouldn't keep secrets from her husband, even in a business arrangement. About that, we should discuss terms. You mentioned 20% of net profits from the silver. Plus room and board, access to the mineral rights if you want to work, acclaim yourself, and a clean divorce after 1 year. What about living arrangements? Color touched Ada Mae's cheeks. The cabin has a loft, well insulated and dry. You're welcome to it. As for other expectations, this is business, Mr. Stone. I'm not asking you to play husband beyond what's legally necessary to secure my inheritance. Jed nodded slowly. Fair enough. My word is my bond on the divorce. But your enemies won't honor any agreement. Croft won't stop. That's why I chose a man who wears his gun like he knows how to use it. Sometimes the law needs backing of a different kind. Hoofbeats thundered outside. 6 riders, Jed reported quietly, moving smoothly to the window. That's Rufus Finch in front. The doctor's brother, Croft's foreman, a man who delights in cruelty. You'll do. Nothing alone, Ada Mae interrupted, retrieving her Winchester. This is my land, my fight. They stepped onto the porch together. Ada Mae, Rufus Finch called out. Heard some disturbing news, something about you making unseemly propositions. Nothing unseemly about a woman securing her future, Ada Mae replied with a controlled voice. Mr. Stone and I will be married tonight. Report that to whoever's interested. Rufus's eyes shifted to Jed. Don't believe I know you, friend. Name's Stone, and I'm not your friend. The lady's agreed to be my wife. That makes her welfare my business. Anyone who has issue with that can take it up with me directly. The two men locked eyes, a sustained, silent exchange of wills. Finally, Rufus wheeled his horse around. We'll be seeing you, Hawkins. Cedar Creek is a small town. Then everyone will know to leave my wife in peace, Jed replied, his voice a low promise. Only when the hoofbeats faded did Ada Mae lower the rifle. They'll be back, she said. Yes, but not tonight. Tonight we make this legal. Tomorrow we start fighting back. He glanced at her. This won't end with a simple wedding ceremony. It starts a war. My father spent his life building something in these mountains. If that means war, then so be it. He raised a survivor, Ada Mae corrected. But maybe with the right partner, I can be something more. She paused. We should head to town soon. Reverend Mills goes to bed early. We'll need witnesses. Mrs. Chen, whose son was driven out by Croft, and old Pete Winters, who remembers when Croft was just a snake. They'll stand witness. As they prepared to leave, Ada Mae paused. Jed, I need you to know something. I don't expect this to be forever. When the year's up, you're free to go. No hard feelings. Jed adjusted his hat. Let's worry about getting through tonight first. Tomorrow has a way of changing plans. They set off down the mountain as darkness fell. The little church at the edge of Cedar Creek witnessed the irregular wedding. They were accompanied by Mrs. Chen and Pete Winters, the pillars of a nascent resistance. Marriage ain't something to enter lightly, Pete warned. I'm sure, Pete, Ada Mae replied. Papa always said, when you're caught between a rock and a hard place, sometimes you have to make your own path. Reverend Mills appeared, looking pained but resigned. Mr. Stone, you entered this union freely? Unless you count the coercion of conscience, Reverend. The lady needs help, and I'm in a position to provide it. The ceremony was simple. When Jed took her hand, his calloused palm warm against hers, something unexpected stirred in Ada Mae's chest, a sense of finality and hope. Do you, Jedediah James Stone, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do, Jed said, his voice steady. Do you, Ada Mae Grace Blackwood, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? I do. Mills paused. You may shake hands, I suppose. But Jed, ignoring the suggestion, lifted her hand to his lips, brushing a gentle, formal kiss across her knuckles. Mrs. Stone, he said formally. Mr. Stone, she replied. They had just finished signing the register when Rufus Finch burst in, backlit by the darkness. Heard there was a wedding. Funny how we didn't get invitations. Jed positioned himself between Rufus and Ada Mae. Private ceremony, family only. Family, a drifter, a mixed-breed woman, a Chinese woman, and a broken-down prospector. That's the family Ada Mae chooses. Better than snakes and thieves, Pete shot back. Rufus's hand twitched toward his gun. You pull that iron in a church, Finch, and you'd better be prepared to use it. Question is, are you ready to meet your maker tonight? Rufus hesitated. Just wanted to deliver a message from Mr. Croft. He tossed an envelope onto a pew. He's calling in your father's debts, Ada Mae. Payments due in full by week's end. We'll review any legitimate claims through proper channels, Jed said evenly. Now you boys have delivered your message. Time to go. Rufus smiled, cold and mean. This ain't over, Stone. You tied yourself to a losing hand. Only when the hoofbeats faded did Ada Mae snatch up the envelope. Lies. Papa never borrowed from Croft. These documents are forgeries. He's trying to bankrupt me before the statute even runs out. Can you prove it? Papa kept perfect records. Everything's in his strongbox. But a territorial judge might not care about proof. Not if Croft greases the right palms and calls in favors. Then we'd better make sure we have more than just papers on our side. We need people. As they walked back toward their cabin, Jed was quiet. This is bigger than just protecting your inheritance. Croft has his fingers in everything, manipulating every lever of power in this valley. Who else has Croft hurt? Who else might stand with us? The Spanish families in the valley, the small ranchers, the miners who work his claims for pennies. There are many who hate him, but fear has kept them silent. Fear is a powerful thing, Jed agreed. But so is hope. We need to give them something to hope for, a reason to break their silence. The first test came 3 days after the wedding. Jed woke to the acrid smell of smoke. Flames licked at Ada Mae's supply shed. "Fire!" he bellowed, grabbing the water buckets. They formed a frantic bucket brigade of 2. By dawn, half the shed was charred ruins. "Deliberately set," Jed said grimly, examining the scorched ground. Coal oil splashed on the walls. Rufus Finch's boots. The scuff pattern is distinctive. Can we prove it? Not in court, but we can send a message of our own that they'll understand. Jed smiled sharply. "Get dressed. We're going to town." They rode into Cedar Creek. Their first stop was Rufus Finch's boarding house. Jed kicked open the dining room door. "Stone, bit early for social calls." "Not a social call." Jed crossed the room in 3 purposeful strides and upended Rufus's table, sending china and breakfast flying. "That's for the fire." Rufus surged to his feet, but froze when he found himself staring down the barrel of Jed's Colt. "You got proof?" "Got your boot print. Got a wife who lost 3 months of medicine because you're too stupid to cover your tracks. Question is, do I settle this legal or personal?" Ada Mae stepped forward, her voice cutting and clear. "My husband has a reputation. The Wallace gang learned that in Amarillo. You boys want to test it?" Rufus, cowed by the drawn gun and Ada Mae's determination, raised his hands. "No need for gunplay. Can't prove nothing about no fire." "Then put $60 on what's left of this table. Compensation for destroyed property. Every ounce of willow bark and comfrey root replaced." Rufus counted out the bills, his face a mask of impotent rage. "This ain't over." "No," Jed agreed. "But next time you come at us, do it face to face. Sneaking around in the night is coward's work." At the general store, Ada Mae used the money to replace supplies. Thomas Garrett, the proprietor, admitted he was struggling. "Croft's squeezing the freight rates. I can barely stock goods. Half the town's in the same boat, facing bankruptcy." "Competition for Croft's freight monopoly?" Jed asked. Garrett hesitated, looking around nervously. "You'd need capital, connections, protection from Croft's retaliation." "We might arrange all 3, Ada Mae said, planting the seed of resistance. Their circuit continued. They found Mrs. Chen surrounded by Rufus Finch's men, her laundry scattered in the dust. Rufus claimed a new emergency ordinance banned foreigners from city limits. Jed caught Rufus's wrist, applying pressure that made the foreman whimper. "Town council needs a quorum to pass ordinances." "When exactly did this vote happen?" "Last night, emergency session. Croft, Dr. Finch, and Banker Hutchkins," someone supplied. "Doesn't sound legal to me. Does it sound legal to you folks?" Jed challenged the gathering crowd. Ada Mae raised her voice, addressing the entire plaza. "Town meeting tonight, 7 o'clock. Time we discussed what kind of law we want in Cedar Creek, the kind that protects all citizens, or the kind that only serves the rich." "She's a property owner and a married woman," Jed pointed out. "Any dozen property owners can call a meeting. Who here owns property and wants their voice heard?" Hands shot up throughout the crowd. Small business owners, ranch hands, even some of Croft's own laborers. 7 o'clock, Ada Mae repeated. "Spread the word." Jed watched Rufus storm off, clutching his throbbing wrist. "You know they won't let this meeting happen peacefully. I'm counting on it. Every time they overplay their hand, more people see their true nature and the injustice they endure." That evening, the meeting hall was packed. Rufus Finch tried to cancel the meeting, citing sheriff's orders. "Sheriff doesn't have that authority," Ada Mae replied calmly, citing the town charter, reciting the law she had learned by heart from her father's books. Rufus moved toward his gun. Jed's moved faster, the familiar click of the hammer drawing tight silence. "You really want to do it again in front of all these witnesses?" Rufus stepped aside, defeated. "This ain't over." "No," Ada Mae agreed, sweeping past him. "It's just beginning." 3 days later, the critical test came. Jed ran toward a scream, finding Ada Mae kneeling beside 8-year-old Timothy Johnson, burning with fever. Dr. Theron Finch had given up on the boy, prescribing only laudanum. Sheriff Croft, his voice smooth and ominous, appeared with deputies. This woman is practicing medicine without proper certification. Step away from the boy, Mrs. Stone. Would you rather I let him die to satisfy your paperwork? Ada Mae challenged. Croft's smile was thin. The law is the law. Children live instead of die, Jed countered, returning with Ada Mae's supplies. Interesting priority, Sheriff. The crowd is watching. Ada Mae examined the boy. Mind fever? From the bad air in the abandoned shafts. Dr. Finch, what treatment did you prescribe for mind fever? Finch shifted uncomfortably. The symptoms presented as common fever. Because you never asked the right questions, Ada Mae said curtly. She administered a sulfur compound and willow bark tincture, explaining her method to the anxious crowd. An hour passed in tense silence. Timothy's eyes fluttered open. Mama, he whispered. The crowd erupted in celebration. Deputies, arrest this woman for practicing medicine without a license, Croft snarled, his authority dissolving before his eyes. Jed blocked the way. You arrest the woman who just saved a child's life in front of his mother and all these witnesses, and see how this town treats you after. Ada Mae stood. Arrest me for what? I gave a child herbal tea and sulfur. Show me the law that makes any of that illegal. Croft was trapped. We'll let the judge decide, he said coldly. But mark my words, Mrs. Stone, your days of playing doctor are numbered. He stalked off. The battle was won, but the war was escalating. The riders' news spread like wildfire. Judge Carter was coming early, bringing a federal marshal to investigate land claims. This changes everything, Ada Mae said that evening. Croft must be scrambling to destroy evidence. Jed studied Josiah Blackwood's meticulous papers. Your father was thorough, but look at this original land purchase deed. The witness signature, Judge Theodore Carter. Your father saved his life. Judges remember people who saved their lives. That evening, Mrs. Chen, Pete Winters, and Thomas Garrett gathered at the cabin. Croft is calling in debts, offering to forgive them for anyone who will testify against Ada Mae, Garrett reported. Garrett then produced his ledger, records of Croft's systematic fraud. He confessed Croft had held him captive to keep him from testifying. I heard things about your father's mercury poisoning. A chemist named Cowley specializes in subtle solutions. Croft hired him. Murder, Pete said flatly. Multiple murders. We have to secure this chemist. Rocks sailed through the cabin window. Witch! Murderer! Negro trash! They're trying to provoke us, Ada Mae said. If you shoot, they'll claim self-defense. Then we don't shoot, Jed decided. Pete fired rock salt loads from his scattergun, stinging the mob's posteriors and sending them scattering in embarrassing pain. Jed cornered Rufus Finch. Tell Croft something for me. Every move he makes, we document. When the judge comes, we'll be ready. Croft owns half the territory. You're fighting the whole system. Then maybe it's time the system changed. Later, Ada Mae found Jed keeping watch. Your way. Healing, fighting with laws and papers. It's harder, but maybe more lasting. We make a good team. We do. Jed turned to her. Ada Mae, this marriage, I know it started as business, but she placed a finger on his lips. Not tonight. After the judge comes, after we know if we've won or lost, then we can talk about what this is becoming. Jed caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. After the judge, Judge Theodore Carter arrived. The courtroom was packed. Croft began his accusations of fraud and witchcraft. Mrs. Willis confessed Rufus Finch had bribed her. Dr. Theron Finch took the stand, claiming superior training. And Mrs. Stone? Carter asked. 15 years studying under my father, who trained at the Freedmen's Medical College. I've studied every medical text and learned traditional healing from Cherokee practitioners. Thomas Garrett took the stand, detailing Croft's fraud and his secret ledger. Ada Mae stood for the final argument. She took the deed. Your Honor, do you remember signing as witness to this transaction? Then you'll remember that Josiah Blackwood saved your life that day. My father treated you with the same traditional remedies I use now. You recovered, and you insisted on witnessing the deed. You said, "A man who saves lives deserves to build a life." I remember, Carter said quietly. Josiah Blackwood, Ada Mae said, producing the mercury vial. a good man whom Sheriff Croft had poisoned with mercury. A thin man stood in the back. "I'm Harold Cowley, chemist. From Denver. I can't live with it anymore. Croft hired me to create slow-acting poisons." Judge Carter's gavel came down hard. "Marshal, take Sheriff Croft and Dr. Thashawn Finch into custody pending federal investigation. The marriage is valid and binding. The Blackwood land holdings are legitimate. Mrs. Stone is free to continue helping those who seek her care." Court dismissed. Ada Mae stood frozen. "It's over." "The legal part, maybe," Jed said, "but there'll be repercussions." "You've protected his legacy," Ada Mae replied to the judge. "Now we build something better, a town where justice means something." "I married a man who makes big dreams possible," Ada Mae said. 6 months after the trial, Cedar Creek had transformed. A cooperative, led by Garrett and the Sandoval family, now offered fair freight rates. The sheriff's mansion became a school. Jed was commissioned as the town's marshal, establishing a true, unbiased rule of law. A new medical clinic opened. Dr. Elizabeth Hartley, a graduate from Chicago, arrived. When young Timothy Johnson broke his arm, they worked together. Hartley set the bone. Ada Mae provided willow bark and comfrey. Their initial philosophical differences, Hartley's reliance on modern science, Ada Mae's belief in traditional knowledge, were forged into a shared commitment to patient care. This true partnership, built on mutual respect and necessity, became a model for the new town. Jed found Ada Mae in their garden. "Letter from the territorial governor. They want you to address the medical board about integrating traditional healing." "We'll go," she corrected. "Partners, remember?" That evening, they hosted dinner for their extended family. The atmosphere was joyous, the conversation full of possibility. "Hard to believe this all started with you ordering me to your bed in the town square," Jed murmured. She laughed. "Desperate times. Though I notice you haven't complained." "No complaints at all," Dr. Hartley announced. "Harvard Medical School wants to study her treatment methods." "They want me to document my methods, share the knowledge," Ada Mae protested. "Which is how change happens. One letter, one student, one saved life at a time." Later, as they cleaned up, Ada Mae grew thoughtful. "Do you ever regret it? Getting tangled up in my problems? You could have been anywhere but here, washing dishes in a cabin." Jed set down his dish rag. "I've been a lot of places, but I've never found anything worth staying for. Until you." Ada Mae's breath caught. "I saw fire, purpose, the kind of strength that builds communities and changes worlds. And now I see my wife, my partner, the woman who saved this town." He cupped her face gently. "I love you, Ada Mae, not because I have to, but because I can't imagine being anywhere else." Ada Mae's eyes shimmered. "I love you too. I think I have since you kissed my hand at our wedding." Their kiss was interrupted by a knock. A young man stood on their porch. "Mrs. Stone, I'm James Morrison, Dr. Finch's nephew. I'm a real doctor. I want to learn from you. Can you set aside what you think you know? Can you see patients as people, not just symptoms? I can try. Will you teach me?" "We start at dawn," Ada Mae said. "Healing isn't about who has the most certificates. It's about serving with humility and compassion." Jed chuckled. "You're building a medical school, one student at a time. It's perfect, just like you." They watched the lights of Cedar Creek twinkle below, a town transformed. "Papa would be proud," Ada Mae said softly. "He is proud. Somewhere Josiah Blackwood is looking down at his daughter and knowing every sacrifice was worth it." Jed pulled her close. "You know, for a business arrangement, this has worked out pretty well." Ada Mae laughed. "The best business I ever conducted. It bought me a legacy, a community, and a partner for life. And to think," Jed whispered, pulling her closer still, "it all started because you needed someone in your bed." "Jedediah Stone," Ada Mae protested, laughing harder. "That's not what I—" He silenced her with a kiss, a promise of all the quiet tomorrows they had earned. The mountain woman and her cowboy were home.